everyone, welcome to HOA Fight Club. I'm Raylene Schiavano. I'm going to discuss today the CNBC news report that was done, why homeowners and renters are struggling in the US. Now, there's many reasons why they're struggling. And as I was listening to this report, which I will put in the description of on this link of this video, but they were talking about many different things. And a lot of it was the financials and how the fines and fees, and we know how those all hurt us. But they were also talking about why property values are, not staying where they should be. The HOA is professing that they increase your property values, which I know they don't increase your values for my personal own experience of how it hurt my property values once they actually did the in-depth inspection. And that's the problem. A lot of our homes are never inspected, especially if you live in a condo association. Your home is not being inspected by an outside independent source that's not profiting from these inspections. So when reserve studies are done, that person is profiting from doing the reserve study. They're not held responsible. So if they do something or say something doesn't have that lifespan, they're not held to that. There's no standard for them to be held to. So whatever they deem is good for that report is good for that report. So then you don't have, the board doesn't use licensed contractors half the time. They use their family and friends. They're getting kickback deals. The government's not watching over them. So nobody is making sure that things are done right. I know in my city, they had a multi-housing, which is apartment complexes and condos that weren't in an HOA, have to be inspected every 3 years by the city to make sure they're up to code. But they excluded HOA condo associations when they did that law. So, I mean, it's actually excluded from the law that they don't have to be inspected. Well, any multi-housing, because they share walls and they share responsibilities, there should be some sort of an inspection by an outside source like the state, which I think the state should do the inspection because or the city should be doing the inspection to make sure that they're up to code and that things are being maintained in the correct way. Now, they're relying on these reserve studies to be honest and forthright. But if you're not held to a responsibility, the reserve study doesn't do any in-depth investigation. They don't make sure permits were pulled. They don't check to make sure the contractor was licensed. What happens if that contractor is not licensed and the homeowner brings it up to the board's attention? Usually nothing is ever done, and there's no industry or government that will do anything if you report that to the government. They just don't care. They want nothing to do with it. So then they're using their, family and friends as the landscapers, and, they're taking shortcuts, but those landscapers aren't the best of what's out there. They're the property managers, usually relative or boyfriend or husband, which I have one that's really crazy that has a huge amount of, this property manager is a huge property manager who has, their husband is the landscaper. Well, they just seem to get all the contracts and all the bids, even though the property manager isn't making that decision. It is a conflict of interest. They do have the property managers have a lot of pull with the boards, and they have a lot of influence over these boards to do what they want them to do, to help them out, to give them that kickback for being such a good property manager. So, and then when you add the fines and the foreclosures are, rampant in these communities. So you'll see a turnover rate in some communities over and over, which actually hurts the property values when you see liens and foreclosures. And if you look at an HOA, there's so many liens, you can't tell me that's not hurting our property values. When you allow for these kind of liens for a $50 fine, and then you add the variable, which the Washington State Department of Commerce did a study on condo conversions and how they were more expensive to live in a condo because of the variable of the high risk of what fees could actually be charged. So it is not an easy, it's not easy to keep your property values up if nobody's watching over who's supposed to be maintaining these properties. You can't tell me an uneducated board knows what they're doing, and they don't know what they should be doing with envelope studies and, making sure those envelope studies, those people don't care about. I mean, I had envelope studies done on my property, and the envelope study guy wouldn't even give the truth of what the results were for the concrete testing because it didn't go with the board's narrative and the association's narrative. They are influenced and paid off by the board and the property managers. In this news report, they did a whole thing on, the industry, and the industry is profiting $38 billion a year off of these communities. And, they don't make any extra money. They don't get a cut of the funds and the fees for the assessments. Yeah, they do. They get a huge amount. So our monthly fees pay for their all of their fees. So their meeting fees, their any extra fees, their overtime fees. If you have a paper printed, we pay for, how many, the printing. They don't just charge you for what the paper costs. They charge you an extra amount on top of every, piece of paper that's printed for mailings. Mitigation fees. If there's a flood in the apartment or the condo complex, they have to come in and they have to make sure they become the project manager and they're in charge of everything. So they're getting paid extra for that. A lot of these fees you don't see under just the property management fees, but you see them throughout the budget and you don't even know they're there. They are paid to drive around and look for fines. So that's an extra fee that costs. I've seen it in the contracts. It's not just part of the property management thing. It's an extra fee to have us come, drive around twice in your parking lot every month and make sure that everybody's up to code, right? Up to code. So they get to inspect, but the city doesn't inspect them at all. So they're inspecting us every day for what we're doing wrong instead of inspecting what the common areas are doing wrong or going wrong. So they should be mostly focused on the common areas, but we, the people, have become the common areas. We are what are being maintained. We are not maintaining the common areas that they are actually responsible for, which is really mind-boggling for me. And then you have the resale docs. Our resale docs in Washington State are $275 to $500 that they're paying for these documents, which is your declaration, your bylaws, your financials, the reserve studies, which are already put into place. If you have a property manager, those documents are already collected and into place, and all they have to do is hit send on an electronic transfer, and then they're sending off to HomeWise, and HomeWise is making another $50 or whatever they charge on top of those other fees that are already responsible from the property manager. So they're just feeding another industry that we don't need to manage us. These are the extra fees that they're making. They make processing fees for every fine that you get. I've seen property managers charge $50. If you get a $50 fine, you also get a $50 charge from the property manager to collect that fine or to do the paperwork or the processing fees. So when they say they don't make that much money, they are making a ton of money. Then you have the attorneys who are making $500 an hour. They get paid no matter what. They don't have to be right. They are the enforcer and the collector. So they're also getting paid for collection fees on the other side, and they get to enforce what they want to be collected. It's very convenient for them. They're in a great position because they get paid no matter what. And there's no oversight over them. So if you make a complaint that the attorney is treating you unfairly, who's going to care? It's not the government. Even the ombudsman's office that are in 6 to 8 states or whatever we have, their hands are tied. They're not there for any reason but to take in complaints. Well, we don't need to pay tax dollars and ombudsman fees, which I know Nevada charges per home. They get paid per home for the ombudsman's office to be able to do nothing. And they say they're doing something, but they're not. I've had complaints. I've seen complaints that have gone in and they don't even investigate. They ask the attorney, "Did you do this wrong?" And the attorney said, "No, I didn't do it wrong." "Oh, okay. There's nothing wrong here." So they're relying upon nothing. They're not holding a court. They're not holding a hearing. They're not doing anything. They didn't even come to the person that made the complaint and get any clarification of why they're making this complaint in the first place. So these ombudsman's offices are worthless and a waste of our money and our time. But these people are all making money. CAI would not be in business if they weren't making money. Check out the open corporates that you can check how much money they make a year. The Virginia office alone made over between 16 and 18 million in the last few years. Each year. That's a lot of money. This is the biggest lobbying group in the United States. They want to hold you hostage in your home. They do not want oversight in their homes. And this CNBC news report is just scratching the surface of what is going wrong. And how do we fix this? Well, we fix this by getting our government to get CAI out of the lobbying business, as they are the professionals that are holding us hostage. They are the predators. They're coming after us. They're coming after our homes. They have non-judicial foreclosures. They have super priority liens. They don't have to even go to court to take your home. They can just do it. And who's going to do this? The courts are going to balance it out. How many of you have 20 grand sitting in your bank right now that you can go fight your HOA with? Because that's the minimum you're going to spend to go fight your HOA, because the government has given away our rights. They've given away the protections that you were promised for your property rights because they didn't want to take care of it. The municipalities don't want to take care of it because now they're not having to pay for your sewer lines and your gas lines. If you don't live in an HOA, you don't have to worry about being fined. If you don't live in an HOA, if your roof's going bad, you can look at it yourself and you can go, okay, I can afford this roof or I can't. But in an HOA, you can't. Guess what? That special assessment can come for you, and it can come for you at any time, and it's due in 30 days. And I've seen these special assessments that they did on people, and I've seen 45% of the homeowners not be able to pay that special assessment of $15,000. Do you have another $15,000 to pay for that? So you see, these things come at you quickly and they come at you hard. And if you can't pay, if you can't afford to redo your roof in your own community when you're not in an HOA, you don't lose your home. If you can't afford to do your roof in the condo association you live in, you will lose your home. They will put a lien on it and they will foreclose if you do not pay that special assessment. And there is no help. There was the half fund that's going to run out. That was a joke. That was, I think, if somebody actually does a really in-depth investigation to the half fund, which is the homeowners assistance fund across the United States, you're going to find that most of those fees went to attorneys, not to the homeowners to save their homes, not to help them. Attorneys' fees usually come first in the assessments. Think about that. If assessments are so important, why would we want attorney fees to come first? That would be one of the last things I pay. Assessments should always come first. And in the order of payments, guess what? That's not what happens, because they want you past due on your assessments so they can foreclose. See, assessments, if you're past due on your assessments, you're foreclosed, and they consider their money that they're charging to your account an assessment. So it's assessed to your account by a uneducated board. So that means it's really valid. And I have to question the government. How can you do that to these people? How can you put these people in jeopardy and not help them save their homes at the end of the day, and just wash your hands of it and say, oh, we had nothing to do with it? The government has everything to do with it. They gave away our rights to protect our homes and to protect our property rights. And that is where we are in America right now. And these HOAs have more power than they were ever meant to have. And the reason they were set up in the first place was for racial issues, so that they could keep the minorities out. And we should say, no more. We should revamp these laws. We are working on reasonable solutions, and we can't even get CAI to come to the table. So I know that's in Washington state, but it's across the United States. Everyone's fighting. We are fighting for you, but you have to stand up. You have to call your legislators, and you have to say no more. All right, you guys, I'll see you on the next one.